was like, I'm going to this. It just sounded like the perfect fit for me. I mean, people that really want to or have been to every single country in the world. I don't know if I'll ever get to every single country, but I certainly want to keep trying. And the whole idea that, any place that I mention, any geographical entity, people will know about it. And that's like, I need to be around people like that. But really, you need a car to get to those off the beaten track places. That was probably my favorite part of the trip, is when I just one day I wasn't feeling that great and I didn't want to go as far and it was starting to rain, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to take a kind of a little nearby road trip of where I was staying. But that ended up being one of the best days because there were just one thing after another. Just get out there, experience, explore, get curious. That's my tagline. Get curious.
Welcome to the Winging It Travel podcast with me, James Hammond. Every Monday, I'll be joined by guests to talk about their travel stories, travel tips, backpacking advice, and so much more. Right now, I'm taking the podcast on the road travelling with me. So tune in every week for short form episodes detailing all my travels alongside my Monday guest episode. Are you a backpacker, gap year student, or simply someone who loves to travel? Then this is the podcast for you, designed to inspire you to travel. There'll be stories to tell, tips to share, and experiences to inspire. Welcome to the show. Let's get into the episode. Hello and welcome to this week's episode where I'm joined by John McKenzie, who has travelled to 60 countries, 45 US states, and all 105 counties in Kansas. I saw John do another interview about a road trip in Armenia, so I want to hear about that today on the podcast. We're also going to delve into French Polynesia, Uruguay, and the Falkland Islands. So John, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Great. Thank you very much, James.
Where are you based right now?
So I'm in Rockville, Maryland. It is near Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. is it its own county, its own state, or is it part of another state?
So Washington is actually a separate district. It's not a state. There has been for many years an interest from residents of DC to have statehood.
Yeah.
And actual license plates say taxation without representation. But right now it's just the District of Columbia. But
that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's a interesting history and how that came about, and but that I used to live there several years ago, but I've lived in this area now, but it's close enough. I live near the metro, so I can walk to the metro in 10 minutes and get on the red line and go right downtown, and it's pretty convenient. So, but at the same time, I don't go there as much as I used to.
Do people who live in Washington, D.C., there must be people who live there who don't work in government, right? Who just live there just because it's Washington, right?
Yeah. I've never worked in government. I've worked I've definitely been involved with government contracts or things like that where employers have dealt with the government, but and it's all around, but no politics or government specifically for me. But yeah, there's plenty of people that don't work in government, but it's a government city. That's kind of what it's always probably going to be. It's a transient city. Every 4 years or so, there's kind of an exodus of one group and another group comes in, and it's very diverse. That's one of the things I really like about it. There's just people from every country in the world are here. There's always something to do. Aside from, most of the museums are free. All the national museums, there's a lot of other museums and a lot of other things in the area. Mm-hmm. So lots of great ethnic food, especially Ethiopian, El Salvadorian, and Central American. And yeah, there's always unique events. In May, one of my favorite events is the Embassy Open House. So they select not every single embassy, but pretty much there's a DC tourism group that tries to put it together, and they have participating embassies, and I think it's anywhere from 30 to 50.
Oh wow.
And it's just fun because you just kind of I usually map it out and try to figure out where I want to go. I usually go to the ones that are the most obscure or have the best chances of having a shorter line. And yeah, it's fun. I actually met I met somebody at the Eritrean embassy who promised to expedite my visa if I would
Oh.
go there. So that's prompting me to plan a trip there actually this November. So um, among other places, but yeah, but that's kind of one of the unique to DC. It's kind of there's no other place that has embassies like that in this country. So it's a unique event.
Oh
Yeah.
wow, yeah. I do hope to visit this maybe 6, 7 weeks. So yeah, that'd be pretty cool because I think people in the UK think Washington DC is just the White House and a few government buildings. I don't think people realise it's actual full-fledged city
Yeah.
there with people living in it.
Yeah. Oh
I
yeah.
definitely
No,
didn't. Yeah.
there's lots of cool neighborhoods and it's changing a lot. I mean, I go down to different place that maybe I'd been before, but it'd been years. I don't recognize it. It's sometimes like, where am I? Oh yeah, I'm in DC, but this whole neighborhood is new or it's changed or
Mm.
something. So there's a lot of hidden gems in the DC area. And then the bigger area, Virginia, Northern Virginia has a lot too. Old Town, Alexandria, and Mount Vernon, George Washington's home, further south of there, and then Maryland, and then really, if you go further out, you can go within 2 hours. You can hit Harper's Ferry, West Virginia, some beautiful nature areas in the all the mountains, the Blue Ridge Parkway, uh, and then the ocean is about, well, it depends on traffic, but we'll say four, roughly 4 hours, maybe 3 to 4 hours across the Chesapeake Bay, and lots of islands and inlets and
Oh,
Chesapeake. Maryland's actually quite an interesting state because there's a lot for a tiny state. Growing up in Kansas, looking at the map, I mean, it was one of those little tiny states in the corner
yeah.
northeast, but it's really quite diverse. You've got the mountains in the west, and then there's like the suburban area, there's like central Maryland, and then there's the southern Maryland and the islands and the coast. And so there's lots of different areas, Baltimore.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to see and do. And I still haven't done as much in Maryland as I'd like to. So reminding me that I need to get out and
Yeah.
where I live now.
Yeah,
We're
it
going
sounds like
across the world.
it's like a dream location, actually. Yeah, I didn't really thought about that. The access to all the different types of things you can see. Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. I think again, Maryland. What do people think? The Wire, Baltimore, maybe. I don't know, but I guess there's more to see than just that.
Yes, but
Yeah.
that definitely draws a lot of people in.
Okay, it still draws people.
They have it. I think they had or have a tour, a Wire tour.
All right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Baltimore is kind of cool. It's very different from DC. They're only 38 miles apart, I think, but
Mm-hmm.
culturally are just about as far apart as like being on the West Coast versus the East Coast, because it's just a
Yeah.
totally different vibe of a town, different demographics, different histories. Yeah, but I like Baltimore. It's kind of more laid back. Here in DC, sometimes there's what do you do is the first question the people will
Yeah.
ask. In Baltimore, it's just more like, how's it going, hun? They're a different vibe. But I like them both for various reasons. So
Okay. Yeah, I need to maybe add that in. We'll see. Okay. We're going to delve into your early travels because I'm always keen to hear the early story behind a traveler. So, first of all, how did you become inspired to maybe travel as much as you have? Was there a trip when you're young? Did your parents take you away? Like, what was the vibe?
well, really, it all started probably when I was about 5 or 6, and my dad gave me his father's stamp collection.
Okay.
And I don't know, for whatever reason, that just resonated with me. I just got really into it. Just looking at all of the stamps and the different countries and the flags. I mean, I was all in, and that's what I did. I didn't go out and play football or I was pretty much inside with my stamp collection in my head, either in the stamp album or an atlas or almanac or some sort, looking at different countries and all of the customs and languages and everything. So that really fascinated me. But it never really occurred to me that I could actually go to these places until, I mean, we did some domestic trips. I think the furthest we had gone was California and then Pennsylvania. We did some road trips, but and then I was in college and we took a trip to the Bahamas. So that was the first international trip that I went to. I didn't even go to Canada until later. But I met, and then later in college, I started meeting people that had backpacked, and you know, somebody had hiked the Appalachian Trail, and somebody had backpacked across Europe. And then my last year as an undergrad, I had a roommate that he had this really cool chair, and I was like, "Oh, did you make that?" He's like, "No, I got that when I lived in Burkina Faso." I was like, "What?" I mean, nobody I knew had ever heard of Burkina Faso, let alone just flippantly saying like, "Oh, I lived there." So so then it turned out he had backpacked in Europe, and he had all sorts of travel stories, and that really inspired me to like, oh, and he was from Kansas, and you know, raised on a farm, and it was like, okay, well, so I started saving money. I had gotten a job on campus, and for like a year and a half, I saved up money, and then I talked to other people and who had backpacked, and and then I got into graduate school right after. And so in the summer between my first and second year of grad school, instead of writing a thesis like everybody else was doing, I took off for Eastern Europe because I didn't want to go to where I didn't want to do the traditional Western Europe, France, Spain, Italy that everybody else was doing. I was intrigued by Eastern Europe, especially because at that time it was still, you know, the Eastern Bloc and the former Soviet Union hadn't been, you know, hadn't been that long ago. And that just really interested me. So I had this really ambitious plan to travel for, I guess it was 2.5 months over, ended up being about 10 countries, I think, 10 to 12 countries.
Yeah.
I mean, it was great. I wouldn't change a thing, but it's not how I travel now. But it really was, and I don't even know how I did it. Sometimes when I think back, I just remember I had a few things planned, a few people, connections. Like I had a pen pal in Lithuania.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I met up with and stayed with her family. And I found some random person on the internet that had their email address, and I emailed them in Belarus. And I ended up going through the little northwest corner of Belarus on my way from Poland to Lithuania. And so things like that. And I think, how did that, like, I'd never traveled before, but that just kind of seemed to come naturally to me, or the curiosity about all of these things just kept me going. So yeah, it was an amazing trip. And I actually found one of my other pen pals, I had written this really detailed, kind of like a journal too, and she mailed it back to me recently.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Just reading it like a couple nights ago, and it was just so cool to review how I, you know, what I was thinking and what my impressions were, and also comparing it to what I had remembered or thought I knew.
Yeah.
I remembered certain places being, you know, favorites or places that I liked better than others, but I hadn't remembered how I ranked them, and I put a couple rankings on it. So yeah, it was really good to have that. And I did write journals in paper on those trips. So reading those later has really been amazing. So anyone, I always encourage journal writing, even though nowadays I don't do as much of it because I'm posting on social media. So that's kind of like a journal, but
I guess technically I'm doing it, but as a podcast. So I'm saying it instead of writing it.
That was my introduction to international travel, like solo, other than the Bahamas trip. And I think we did go to Canada I took a road trip with some friends in Canada, but then after that, another roommate, I was considering joining the Peace Corps. And so I don't know if you're familiar with the Peace Corps. It's a US volunteer program started by John F. Kennedy in the 60s, and they would send groups of Americans to different countries to do different projects. So it had been around for a long time. It was one of those things that I remember seeing commercials for and thinking, oh, that looks really interesting, but it's tough. Their tagline is the toughest job you'll ever love. And
Wow.
so I was kind of nearing the end of my grad school career and still not sure what I was going to do with my life. And so I was like, Peace Corps sounds like a good way to push that further and explore. And I had a roommate who had just been to Peace Corps in Lesotho, and he kind of convinced me that that was the way to go. So I applied, and I kind of put all my eggs in one basket after graduating. I didn't have any other plan but to join Peace Corps. Not everybody gets in, but pretty much, I mean, it's a pretty good fit, at least at the time. I think the issue is sometimes timing. They don't always have openings at the time that it works out for you. And I had somebody that was trying to get me to teach English at a university in Tanzania because I have a geography degree. But the timing ended up being like that would have been 6 to 8 months later, whereas the immediate opening that came in the mail suddenly without knowing when it was coming told me that I was going to Uzbekistan. So yeah, in 1997, it was September, I headed off to Uzbekistan for 2 years to teach English. And that was kind of the beginning of like the deep cultural immersion part of the travels. I mean, it's travel, but then you live there.
Yeah, I lived there, aren't you? Yeah.
But I lived for a year with the host family. Well, first of all, we had a training for about 2.5 months in one city, and I lived with a family there. But then they assigned us a site where we would be living for the 2 years. And I ended up going to this place way in the western part of the country in the desert. And I was the first volunteer there, first Westerner I think a lot of people had ever seen. They just thought I was from Russia or Armenia, or they didn't have any idea. They were very confused. Why is this person here? But they knew that I wasn't from there. So, but it became part of the daily. Some days it was, it was cool to be like the person that's from out of town, and then other days you're just like, I just want a break. But ultimately, it was definitely one of the most rewarding experiences I ever had. So, and I was there living with a family in that town for 1 year, and then I moved into an apartment for the second year.
Wow.
And then, and then I came back 9 years later to go to a wedding and travel more. So, but yeah, so that was 1 year later after my Eastern Europe trip. So, and then after the Peace Corps was over, they give you this they call it readjustment allowance. So it's supposed to get you back in the US and get you set up, look for an apartment, and start finding a job and all of that. I spent it all on traveling. So, but that allowed me to travel for about 8 months after Peace Corps throughout Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
And so I went through a lot of the what they call the banana pancake trail.
Yeah.
And I did have banana pancakes, so there is that. And then I ended up coming back through Myanmar and Bangladesh, India, and then Jordan on the way home. So
8 months, that's a decent amount of time. Yeah.
Yeah, and I hadn't been in the US for almost 3 years at that point. So
yeah.
So that was a interesting cultural readjustment too.
Yeah.
I didn't really want to go back. I wanted to be away for that long, to have like that experience of being feeling kind of foreign in my homeland, which was true, because they had this is just a weird thing that I remember, because I stayed, oh yeah, on the way back, I ended up flying into Chicago, and I had never really been to Chicago. I was technically born there, but I'd never been there as an adult. So I wanted to see Chicago. So I spent a couple days there before going back to Kansas with my family. And I remember going and having breakfast, and they gave me change, and the quarters, the coins, had different states on them. And I was like, I didn't know this was a thing. It was just a new commemorative coins that they were releasing over the past few years or something. But I was like, they changed the money. Like, weird feeling to notice that and feel like I just didn't imagine that the money would be different, because American money is probably some of the most boring money.
Basic, yeah.
So that was a funny re-entry experience. That and like to a grocery store, but yeah.
Yeah, I think weirdly the US money is one of the few that is the same size. I think like the $20, $1, $100 note are the same size, just got a different number on it. It's a bit strange. Whereas most countries have different like levels of size to how big it is.
I've heard they're trying to address that, because for people with sight, or
makes sense.
The number, you can feel the size, and something like that. I think that but who knows how long that might take to do, or who will come into power to stop it or something. But
who knows? Yeah.
We'll get into that.
We are going to delve into some of those countries that you traveled to, because I'm intrigued, as I mentioned in the bio at the start, with Armenia, because I've not really had anyone talk about Armenia apart from Rick Zarin, who's out today. But first of all, Armenia, why did you want to go there, and when did you visit first?
Yeah, so I had been wanting to go there for some time. When I went, I think I mentioned earlier that I went back to Uzbekistan for a wedding. So that trip, I was going to go to the Caucasus region, but it just had some issues there at that time, and then it ended up not being enough time. So that had been kind of on my mind to still go there. And then when I heard about the Extraordinary Travel Festival, the first one was going to be held in Yerevan, Armenia. And I was kind of waiting for this other commitment that I had. Wasn't sure if it was going to happen. And then when I found out it wasn't, I was like, I'm going to this. It just sounded like the perfect fit for me. People that really want to or have been to every single country in the world. And, I don't know if I'll ever get to every single country, but I certainly want to keep trying. And the whole idea that, any place that I mention, any geographical entity, people will know about it. And that's like, I need to be around people like that. So, and new city, I hadn't traveled out of the country since before the pandemic. So it was definitely, I was itching to get out. So I made a plan to go there and then explore Armenia a little bit. So I was there for about 3. So I combined it also with the Republic of Georgia. And the whole trip was about 40 days. I think in Armenia, it's like 2.5 weeks. Or so. And I was really, I knew that they had their own alphabet and language, and I thought this might be, I have a little Russian knowledge, and I thought, well, maybe I could get by if I need to, but language has never been a barrier for me to travel. This makes it easier, obviously, if people speak English or if you can communicate, but I found it to be really tourist friendly, but yet not touristy.
Yes.
There's tourism, and I went in October of last year, so it was kind of a good time. It's not as hot because the summers can get quite hot there. realize that, but when I had started following the weather, and even in September, early September, they were getting up to like 100 degrees or 40-ish degrees Celsius. So
Mhm.
yeah, I was like, ooh, I just didn't expect that for location. But when I went, it was just getting really nice and temperate. And in that time that I was there, I did go to some parts of the country that were more mountainous. So there was one time when I experienced snow, and the night temperatures got down to about 0 Celsius. But for the most part, it was just a comfortable time to be there. Not as many people, and the landscape, just the colors. There was some fall leaves changing, and then the kind of the stark landscape, lots of mountains, just a certain color scheme that was very evocative, if that makes sense. But yeah, the thing that I really enjoyed the most about Armenia is just the rural landscapes and all of the monasteries. That's kind of one of the things they're known for, is their medieval monasteries. And these things are just, they're always on like a perfect setting on the side of a mountain with views.
Wow.
And most of them are made, and actually a lot of buildings in Armenia are made out of this stuff called tuff, Tuff. I think in Armenian it's tufa, but tufa in English is a different thing. And I learned this the last time I talked about this, and it was very confusing. So tough, but it's a volcanic stone that is just everywhere in Armenia.
Oh, okay.
All the monasteries, a lot of the government buildings, you'll just see it. It's kind of a thing there. But it sometimes it's really dark and it looks like soot, especially inside, like into these monasteries or like churches, and it's this dark. It kind of looks like somebody just needs to clean it up a little bit, but actually the natural color of the rock. But it kind of adds to the whole mystique of this medieval feeling. I guess that's the best way I can describe it. But I just loved it, and it was very easy. I rented a car. That was a first for me too. I had never driven solo in another country, I mean, outside of North America. So that was really, I was a little nervous about, driving in a different country, that I didn't necessarily know how the road rules would be, so to speak. But and yeah, some people drove a little erratic, but
crazy.
It really was easy to navigate. I had an app that I used to help. It actually helped me. I think it was Yandex. It's like another mapping app, and I helped it to. It beeped when I was going over the speed limit, because every town has a speed trap. So
yeah,
I was trying not to have get a ticket. But really, you need a car to get to those off the beaten track places, and that was probably my favorite part of the trip, is when I just one day I wasn't feeling that great, and I didn't want to go as far, and it was starting to rain, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to take a kind of a little nearby road trip of where I was staying. But that ended up being one of the best days, because there were just one thing after another that was not in the guidebooks. There was a little brochure in my room. I was couch surfing with this guy in a place called Sisian in eastern Armenia, and there was this brochure that showed some stuff, and I was like, okay, I'll check that out. But I just didn't. It was just really cool to go around the bend and see these sites, and there's this old bridge, and the side of the mountain had these basaltic columns of rock, and then at the top of that same mountain was an old fortress. So it was just a lot packed into a small area, and there are a lot of little places like that all around. I mean, I didn't even get to there's a part of Armenia in the north called the Debed Valley that is known for having a lot of, there's a couple UNESCO World Heritage sites, and some frescoes that are from like hundreds and hundreds of years ago. But I didn't even get to that area because there was just a lot. And but I really enjoyed the driving, and the car I got was it was actually an American car. So usually traveling in another country, for Americans, you usually have to get a manual transmission because that's just what they have. But here they had an automatic, and I was like, it was about $330 for the week, which, I mean, rental cars are expensive these days. I rented a car in the US in Florida, and it was more than that for a week. So
wow.
Gas was a little bit pricey, but I paid about a little under $100 for gas for the whole thing, and getting gas before dropping off the rental car was quite stressful. But I would easily rent a car there. It was very easy to drive around.
The roads are good, like
the roads are pretty good. There's a few potholes. I wouldn't drive at night just because of there are some potholes and things, and then there are some drivers. So like the main road that I was taking is a route that truckers use, like semi trucks that go into back and forth from Iran to Russia. And these old trucks, they just don't have the momentum to be able to get up a hill. So they're going like as low as 5 to 10 kilometers an hour. And if you're on these curvy roads, you get stuck behind one of those. You're going to be there for a while. But at the same time, there were plenty of people that were passing on curves and on the solid line. So my rule was, if I can see, I'm going to go, whether there's a line or not. I wouldn't have done that at first, but everybody else was doing it. I mean, I had people passing me. I got stopped with there was a bunch of cows crossing the road. I mean, they were just all over right in front of me. There were a couple farmers there or whatever, but like, okay, I guess I'll kind of ease my way into this. Meanwhile, a couple people just passed right through. Nobody was injured. I was like, okay, the next car, I'm just gonna follow him to get so things like that. But yeah, no, it was pretty easy. There are speed traps everywhere, so but they're most if you know what to look for, you can try to minimize the number. I didn't get any tickets though. So
that's all right. So out of the places that you traveled to in Armenia on that trip, which ones would you say that people should go and visit, like the places that you saw?
Oh yeah, well, it's, as I mentioned earlier, it's kind of hard to pick, but I will say one monastery in particular that I really enjoyed is called Voratnavank, and that is definitely off the beaten track. So I'll throw out some other kind of more accessible places, but that one for me, it was just all the settings were there for a breathtaking view, and nobody else was there. The weather was cool but sunny, partly sunny. It was just all the things. But the one place that most people really should go if they go to Armenia is probably Khor, and that is about 45 minutes or so southeast of Yerevan. And the reason being, it's one of the most important monasteries in the country, but it's the setting, because at the top you can look over and see Mount Ararat and Little Ararat. And for those who aren't familiar with Armenia, so Mount Ararat is actually in Turkey, but historically the Armenian territory extended further into what is now Turkey and other areas, other places in that area. So they still look to Mount Ararat as their kind of sacred mountain. And then there's another smaller mountain right next to it, which I'd never even heard of before, called Little Ararat. And sometimes that's clearer, but on a good day you can see them both, and it's breathtaking. It's also the site of an old city. There's not much left. There's some ruins like above there, but it's really for the views and the monastery. Yerevan itself is, I find, to be really a pleasant city. It's kind of got the best of everything, in my opinion. It's small enough that it's pretty walkable. Everything is kind of in this district called the Kentron, which is a circular district in, right in the middle of the city. And lots of pedestrian walkways and parks and very pretty. Lots of the sites are in that area. And there's also there are a lot of bars and restaurants and places you can go if you want anything from kind of traditional stuff to something a little bit more upscale or more westernized. I mean, they have plenty of chains. I don't prefer to go to any chain restaurants or anything when I'm traveling, but I note that they exist because I wouldn't have necessarily expected to see KFC in Yerevan, let alone a KFC that's outside under like this beautiful park. It looks kind of fancy. But I really like some of the other, the other places. There was a few I like craft beer, so I try to at least find a brewery everywhere I travel, and they had a few there. I couldn't get to them all, but they definitely like their beer in Yerevan. And so there's a lot of different places that you could go, and also the views going up to this place called the Cascade. It's an art, so it's like an art museum, but it's also built on the hill, so steps go up to the top, which is like a plateau above Yerevan, and the city continues up there. But I really enjoyed walking up, and then you walk up one level, there's all these fountains and gardens, and then you turn around and look over the city and see, you can even see Mount Ararat if it's not too foggy or smoggy. So yeah, lots of things to explore in Yerevan, and it was just super easy to navigate and get around, and most people spoke English, I found. So
okay, that's good. How would you rate the budget, like in terms of the countries that you experience? Like, is it budget friendly or slightly expensive in your opinion? Where would you rank it?
I think it was fairly budget friendly. I mean, I did keep track of all my expenses to try to get a sense of, what did I spend, and did I keep myself in budget. But yeah, the lodging, for example, is fairly affordable. I mean, you can find a pretty decent place for $50 or less in Yerevan. And in other cities, even 30 or 20 or less. And the food you can find, I mean, like, you can find expensive food, but you can find some pretty affordable stuff, like less than $5 to $10 for a meal. And then the drinks, the drinks are much cheaper. The wine, wine and beer, especially wine, though, because Armenia is one of the first countries to ever make wine. Actually found evidence of the world's oldest operating winery there. And so you can definitely get by for a pretty decent. I would say I'm trying to estimate the range of, if you wanted like kind of comfortable, I'd say $50 for sure. But you could do it a lot less if you found cheaper places. First, because I was there for this conference, I stayed about 7 or 8 days in Yerevan at first, and I stayed in a hostel just to save a little bit of money. So the hostel was, I think, $11 for a bed in a 4-person room. This place I stayed, called Kantar, it was really one of the best places they had the best breakfast that I can even remember, including like hotels, just because it was all they had a lot of variety. It was different every day, but they had some of the same stuff that you would want. And then there were people there making it fresh, like constantly. And open until, I don't know, from 6 to 10 or something in the morning. And so and there's places where you can sit and work too. So And I met some people just sitting down next to them because of the seating. And yeah, it was kind of the best of everything for that kind of situation. And I really enjoyed it. It was right downtown. It was a block and a half away from where the venue for the event was. And yeah, it was perfect for me. So
And what's that called? Kantar.
Kantar,
Kantar.
Kantar. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. Because
They also have apartments. Like they had a floor that had the dorm rooms and stuff, but they had more floors above that I think, because I saw families come down with their children to the breakfast too. Now, when I was there were a lot of Russian people that were leaving Russia to go find another place to stay, and Armenia allows Russians without, I don't think you need a visa.
No visa, yeah.
So people were moving there, and it was actually, I had one place cancel that I had made a reservation. They said they ran out of room, and I had to find another place. But yeah, so there were definitely a lot of Russians there trying to to find a place. But I actually, I talked to them, and it was refreshing, because I think in the United States, at least, and I think a lot of places, unfortunately, that what's happening right now just gets cast upon all the people as
all
if
the
they're
people, yeah,
responsible. And a lot of the people I talked to were like, we don't want, I don't want to kill innocent people. This guy is crazy. We don't want to have anything to do with him. And they're just stuck in the middle. So and they're trying to find a place to work too, and work remotely. And of course, Armenia was former Soviet Union, so there were lots of Russian population there before anyway. But I really enjoyed the different landscapes, and so after Yerevan, I'm trying to think of what would be a third must-see place. I think a lot of people really like to go to Lake Sevan.
Oh yeah.
Which is beautiful. It's one of the largest lakes in the region. There are some monasteries that are perched on the side, so it's really good setting to go see a monastery with the lake view. And then it's also a popular place for people to get away from Yerevan and go spend some time at the lake. So I would say, if you're going in the summer, it's going to be crowded.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people from, not just from Armenia, but from Russia or other places that go there for vacation. But Dilijan is another one, because it's more there's a national park there. So it's very hilly. There's forests around. So it's a different setting, very idyllic, rural setting. And I didn't get to do too many hikes as much as I would want to, but those are probably some closer to places that are a little closer to Yerevan. The part that I had mentioned earlier, the Varatnavank, that is in the Syunik province, which is in the southeastern part of the country. So it's a little bit further, but that might actually be my favorite region, just because of the number of things that it has that are fewer people, a little bit more off the beaten track. The hills and the mountains are prettier, I think. Yeah, I just like it. And but it's the region that's right next to the disputed Artsakh or Nagorno-Karabakh. And but I didn't, the border areas right at the border could be a little sketchy, but when I was there, I didn't really feel like there was any issue. I didn't feel like there was any issues or threats to my safety. So
I guess it goes in waves, isn't it? Like sometimes there's news of it, sometimes it calms down. Yeah.
I think it's just, like everything, just pay attention to what's going on in and but I didn't find that because there had been some border attacks right before this event, and it didn't impact the event. I was worried it might, but it just seemed to be isolated enough that it didn't cause concern. Even the State Department didn't issue a warning sign, so I don't usually pay attention to those, but I at least like to know what they are so that I can manage other people's anxieties about
Yeah,
where.
that's fair enough. It's a wise bit of advice, just to double check what's going on. But also to finish on Armenia, maybe just a bit of a fun one, like some of the dishes, like food wise. What any favorites or ones that you would recommend?
Yeah, well, lavash is their biggest, most ubiquitous thing, and that's a bread. It's like a long bread, and I did take a day tour that stopped at a couple sites, the pagan temple of Garni and then the monastery at Kagard. But then after that, we went to this place, and they were making the fresh lavash, and it was so good. And I learned how they did it because the hostel that I mentioned, they had lavash and they had all these vegetables, but I didn't understand that how they traditionally eat it is you take a slab of the bread and then you put vegetables in it. You might put some cheese or some sour cream as a base or something like that, and then you just roll it up and eat it kind of like a burrito or a sandwich. So once I found that, I was like, okay, now it makes sense. But yeah, that was really good, and just everywhere. A lot of the food is kind of like Middle Eastern, Greek type of food, but there's also a lot of Georgian food there. So and Russian. So it kind of has this this mix. I tried the grape leaves, which I know they have in a lot of other places, but those were really good. I had probably my favorite dish. It might not be a national dish. I think it was just at this particular restaurant that I went to, but I wrote it down because I had to remember this. It was chicken, sour cream, nuts, and oranges and curry. And I don't think that's a typical Armenian, but it was really good.
Yeah, interesting mix.
Yeah. But they'll have also snacks like these big walnuts put together with fruit, and they're like big like a ball or like a sausage type of thing. Actually, the name is juke, so it's great for just carrying with you and snacking on when you're hungry, because it's actually quite filling. I mean, there's nuts and the fruit juice that's been dipped. They dip the nuts into like this kind of thick fruit juice stuff that kind of like fruit roll up, like a rubbery fruit mixture. And yeah, it's really good.
Wow.
Fresh juices and fresh everything, vegetables and stuff was really good. So yeah.
Okay. And actually one more question I just thought of, and then we move on to French Polynesia, is did you fly from US? And if so, what is the route? Because I reckon a lot of people are thinking, well, how do I get to Armenia? What's the popular flight paths there?
From the US, there's no direct flights, but there were several ways to get there. So because I was going to Georgia, I decided to fly into Yerevan and then out of Tbilisi.
Yeah.
So doing that was a little bit more expensive, not that much. I think in general, Tbilisi is a little cheaper to fly into, but I flew through Brussels, Brussels Airways, and I had a layover in Brussels all day. So I got there early in the morning, and then my flight was in the evening. So it gave me a chance to leave the airport and explore Brussels because I'd never been there either. So that was an added. Other than the fact that I didn't sleep on the flight on the way, so I was pretty tired.
Yeah,
but it was I always get the adrenaline of a new place to get me going. So but yeah, there were a lot of other options. I think most major European cities have flights. I think there's one through Vienna, and there's Lufthansa has flights to the region. I'm trying to think of what else, but that for me, that the schedule that I picked would get me there the best time. The problem with the arrival time was that it was like one something in the morning, and that just seems to be a typical arrival time. I think some of the cheaper airlines from Europe do fly into another airport. I want to say
Ah,
Gyumri.
okay.
Wasn't doing that, so I didn't look into it, but
Mm,
did go to Gyumri.
yeah.
I know we didn't talk about Gyumri. Was interesting because it's on the western part of the country. But the thing I should mention there is if you really like former Soviet architecture and kind of the decadent the Soviet decay, I guess, is the best way to
Yeah.
describe it. So there's this fountain called the Iron Fountain. It's literally just this huge monstrosity. It looks like a spaceship, but it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. Now, unfortunately, Gyumri was hit by an earthquake in 1988, and it destroyed that whole neighborhood,
Mm,
a lot of the city, and killed quite a few people. And they're still recovering. I mean, they're still rebuilding things, but that particular fountain is evocative of like the former Soviet era. It's quite a ways out of the like in the suburb area of the city, but
mhm.
this is the kind of stuff that I go out of my way to to see. But yeah, anyway, the Yerevan airport is about a half an hour or so west of Yerevan.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there's, for my European listeners, there's loads of cities that probably fly to Yerevan. But obviously, if you're based in North America, it's probably going to be a connection via Europe or Middle East. I'm not sure what that's
Yeah,
like.
there Dubai and Qatar, I think, also fly there.
Yeah.
And not that this would impact Americans, but when I was there, I actually met a lot of tourists from Iran and
Hmm.
some from India. So I think, from that part of the world, there are direct flights. But for North Americans getting there, it would probably be through, um, either the European, like Brussels, Vienna,
Yeah.
um, Germany, or maybe Dubai, Qatar.
Okay. That's great. So that's cool. Armenia's on my list. So I'm probably next year. I'm probably going to go. But the only unfortunate thing for me is it's probably August. So that's going to be hot. But I'm
Yeah,
still figuring it out
head to the
potentially.
mountain.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the next country we're going to talk about is one I've seen on social media. The closest I've been to this country is the Cook Islands, which are amazing. But we're going to talk about French Polynesia because we all see the amazing photos and videos right on social media. So you've been there. Obviously, people thinking right now, oh, did you go to Bora Bora? I'm sure you did, but where did you
Well,
actually go in French Polynesia, and what can you advise people maybe if they want to go somewhere else apart from Bora Bora?
yeah. So actually, I did not get to Bora Bora,
Ah,
partly because that's what everybody hears,
yeah.
and I didn't necessarily want to go to a place that was so touristy and expensive. I mean, French
Hmm.
Polynesia is expensive in general, but I really wanted to have kind of a more. So we went there in December of 2019.
Oh
Little did we
wow.
know that was going to be the last for a while. But we went during Christmas, so the plan was to do some island hopping and then be somewhere for at least 5 days to just kind of chill over Christmas and have like a nice island vibe time.
Hmm.
Um, and so we did pretty well with our island hopping. We went to Moorea. So we flew into Tahiti. You have to, if you're
Yeah.
coming from international, all the flights go into Tahiti.
Hmm.
And there is a ferry from Papeete, the capital, over to the island of Moorea. And
Okay.
so we just headed from the airport. We took a bus to the ferry terminal and
Hmm.
got right on a ferry going over to Moorea. And so that's how we started our trip, because we were going to
Hmm.
come back to Tahiti at the end. And we spent 2 nights in Moorea. We rented a car. We decided we were only there a total of 10 days, and so we really wanted to maximize it. This is when I was, we both had full-time jobs, so that was the time to do it. And so we rented a car and drove around the island. We stayed at the southern part of the island in this little, I guess it was Airbnb, but it was like a kind of like a hostel. They had a breakfast in the morning where everybody that was staying there could gather. And actually that was nice. We're still in touch with some of the people. And then so I also had planned to get a traditional tattoo. And so just happened to be the best tattoo artist in French Polynesia is in Moorea. And I tried to figure out how to end in Moorea, and the flight schedules and everything just worked out so that we did it this way. But so I did get the tattoo that second morning.
Yeah.
But then we like went snorkeling, and I was in the sun and the water. So that's not always the best plan, but I would say don't do that. But we didn't have a lot of options in terms of what we were doing. So but Moorea was a really good mix of everything. You can have kind of the small island life, as well as they had resorts and everything. So if you wanted that, you could do that. If you wanted something a little bit more pastoral, you could do that. There's a lot of stuff in the island to see. There's some beautiful mountain vistas, a couple parks, some other neat little things. We actually stopped on the way before we even got to our where we were staying. We stopped at this beach because we hadn't seen a beach in a while, and we spent too long there. Got a sunburn right where the tattoo was going to be. So yeah, I didn't do so well with the planning, but it's fine. Anyway, after Moorea, we flew to an island called Raiatea.
Yeah,
just spent one night there, but it was really 2 days. Raiatea was kind of the capital of Polynesia, the cultural Polynesia, which includes the New Zealand, the Maori,
Maori,
and Cook Islands, and a lot Hawaii. There's a lot of different
Fiji and all that,
cultures there. And so there was this site on the island that was a cultural heritage site. I forgot how to say it's like Tapu Tapatea or something. I totally but it was really neat with all these stones. And so again, we rented a car, drove around the island, and got to see lots of vistas and saw this cultural heritage site. And then the next day we took an excursion in the water that stopped at a bunch of different places, and we went to the island of Taha'a, which is just north of Raiatea. There's no airport there. And there is a resort, so some people can stay there if they wanted to, but we just didn't have the time. So we did the tour around the island. We stopped at a pearl farm, a vanilla farm, and we did snorkeling and things like that. So it was really a good way to at least get a taste of that area. And then we flew from Raiatea to Wahine. And Wahine is where we spent our 5 days during the kind of over Christmas. And that was kind of everything that I had hoped it would be. The only thing was we did have some rain, but what I will say about the weather is, whether it's rainy season or not, rain or not, like it's kind of, you just take what you get. Don't put too much concern into the weather, because people will have, can have 10 days of perfectly sunny weather during the rainy season, or 10 days of rainy weather during the dry season. So we had a little bit of both. And
when is the official dry season?
Actually, I don't know off the top of my head. This whole trip wasn't planned per se.
Okay.
I mean, I wanted to go to the Pacific for a while, but we found one of those it used to be Scott's Cheap Flights, but it's now Going.
Right.
And they had a deal with Air France from Washington, D.C. to Tahiti for less than $500. So
Wow.
we were like, okay, we're gonna make this happen. So and yeah, the flights within Tahiti were probably $470 something.
Yeah.
So it's almost the same as just flying all the way there.
Yeah. I think that's pretty normal for like the small islands in South Pacific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's flight, you can get a pass that I think saves just a little bit. If you go to certain
Yeah.
have like groups of islands, and I really wanted to try to get to another island group, but again, it would have kind of interfered with our 5 days of just not doing a lot. I mean, we did a lot of stuff, but I just didn't want to have to move every day.
Yeah.
And I'd prefer to stay longer. So Lahinia was great because we rented a car for a couple days of it, but we stayed close enough to the little town that we could walk around. And then the days we rented the car, we maximized that by going to all the places that were further away and the sites that were there. There's just a lot of little things. Like there's a stream that has these blue-eyed eels that are sacred.
No.
And you can buy like a tin of mackerel and feed them or something like but and then there's these fish traps that are V-shaped fish traps that date back to a long time ago, traditional fishing methods and just stuff like that. There are a couple of museums, lots of vantage points to look out. We did another excursion in the water one day where we went around the island and snorkeled and did stuff like that. So and then just kind of relaxed, and we had a little kitchenette, so we went to the store Christmas morning. They were open, got some fish, local fish, and got some they had a little place there that made their own liqueur, fruit and chocolate and all sorts of different kinds of stuff. And so we got some of that, went back, had a nice Christmas while it was pouring rain that evening, but it's all good.
Yeah, I just googled it. Officially it's May to October. That's a dry season.
Okay.
But like you say, it's never set in stone, from my experience.
Yeah, so Wahine was really kind of met the expectations or the kind of situation we wanted. The place where we stayed, one of the proprietors was just really friendly. We were there, it was a Friday night, and every Friday at the local bar, they have dancing and stuff. It's like, I want to go dancing, and do you want to go? And it was like, okay, sure. I mean, we were going to that place anyway all the time. So it was cool to have that interaction with the locals. And because I've never been to Hawaii, but I know sometimes the tourism can get kind of separate the local population from the tourists. I felt here that everybody was just enjoying their lives and themselves, and they didn't have that many tourists, but I just felt a much more warmer environment.
Was there a lot of tourists, or would you say it wasn't that touristy for you?
I didn't think Wahine,
or in general, the whole islands?
Probably, we really didn't see a whole lot. We did go when we were on Moorea. They had a cultural show that was on the beach at one of the Hilton resorts. So we did go there, and we got drinks to watch that. But so that's probably where a lot of the tourism is. I almost said unfortunately, but it's not my place to judge how people want to take their
yeah, of course. Yeah.
Especially now that I don't have a full-time job, so I don't have a vacation the same way that somebody that just needs to get away from their stressful job. But I've always preferred to interact with the culture at least a little bit. I know going to a chain and watching it probably isn't the best way, but at least it was something. And we did notice there were more people there, but I didn't feel that it was super crowded. I'm trying to think of how far in advance we booked our places. Yeah, probably at least a few months.
Mm-hmm. I think the time of year you're going, but then it's Christmas, you wouldn't need to book in advance, I think. But like when it's the wet season, I think a lot of people obviously don't go. So I think you're okay. But in the dry season, I imagine, like for the summer, Northern Hemisphere summer, you're going to have to book in advance.
I think that's what I remember reading and researching about, do I need to book, how much planning do you need to do? And it's like, well, a lot of, because it's a French, it's part of France. So a lot of people from France want to go on holiday during the cold weather there. So it makes sense that they might have, more or fewer options for lodging. So yeah, but we had great, mostly Airbnb type of places that we stayed at. And this place that we stayed at Wahini, it wasn't it was like a, I don't know what, pension or one of those kind. It was like a small, there were 6 or 7 different rooms. I think they were all full, but yeah. But it felt quiet. It just felt, everything was laid back. It definitely didn't feel crowds or any of that kind of thing.
Right. Okay. That's good, because I think people would fear, right? You pay all the money and it's like crowded with tourists, but maybe if you're strategic about it, you can maybe avoid the main crowds.
And there was some other, all of these places that we went were in what they call the Society Islands. So there's different, there's the Societies, there's the Tuamotus, there's the Marquesas, and the Austros and the Gambiers. So those are 5 major island groups. And yeah, I really wanted to try to swing another one, but they're pretty far apart, especially the Marquesas. That would be that's kind of its own trip anyway, because they have a totally different culture and language than the rest of the islands. But yeah, the Tuamotus were made up, because I did a lot of looking at these places. Those Tuamotus were more of the atoll type of islands.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
Whereas the Society Islands were, a lot of them were volcanic, central hills or mountains. Or Bora Bora, of course, has kind of it's a mountain with the ring around it, and then
that's a classic photo, isn't it? Yeah.
And then there's another island further beyond Bora Bora that we really wanted to go to, called Malpiti. But again, the timing just didn't work. I think we would have chosen that over Wahini before knowing. We had a great time, so I wouldn't change anything now. But it was really, because Malpiti sounded like it's even more off the beaten track. There were fewer people that go there just because it's further away. And also, I think there was no, everything is cash based. So there's no ATM. You have to kind of plan, bring all the money that you think you're going to need there, because there's no way for you to get money. But it also sounded really, really exotic. So I was like, I just want to go back. But I was
there's always a place to go back. This is a patron shout out to Laura from the Swamp Soup Stickers, who has contributed £5 to the podcast on my Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. Really appreciate it, and it helps the podcast to keep going in the future. If you're interested, head to the show notes where you'll find a link to my Patreon. The website address is patreon.com/Winging It Travel Podcast. For £5 English, you will receive some trendy stickers from myself in the post, a shout out on each episode, and also my digital travel planner by email. Thank you for your support.
We knew we didn't have a whole lot of time there, but pretty much what I had read is that Tahiti, while it has a lot of stuff, and a lot of people tend to think of the whole, people call French Polynesia Tahiti, even though really that's just one of the islands. But but we really liked where we did a little loop on the west. If you can picture the island of Tahiti almost as like 2 islands fused together. So we did a loop around the western part, where the 2 sections meet. There's a little town, and we kind of just went around that and saw some waterfalls, black sandy beaches, just beautiful landscapes, and then came back and just went out and Papeete at night. Papeete is kind of a big city. It's not really that big, but compared to everywhere else, it seems like a big gritty city. And so, there's some things to see. We didn't really get to the museums or any of that stuff, but I think it would be worthwhile. I would like to have seen like a national museum or something like that, but we just wanted to spend more time seeing the other islands. So, but I thought, I was kind of thinking Tahiti would be less interesting, but I actually really enjoyed it too. So, but yeah, then we headed out the next morning to go home. So, but yeah, it was definitely a memorable trip, especially since that was the last one.
Yeah, of course.
Pandemic, and if it hadn't been for that flight deal, I might not have gotten there then. So very fortunate to have had that.
And is it as idyllic as the people see on internet?
Yeah, I would say, there's definitely a lot of scenes, even in Tahiti, that were just like, wow, this is this is insane. Just beautiful tropical setting with the beaches and the mountains in the background, and yeah, definitely.
Okay, so it's a definite must then. Okay, I think for people it just seems like just a long way away from anywhere. Like in terms of it's a real effort to get there. Like imagine you from Europe, you got to go like, well, how the hell where do I start? Like it's just miles from anywhere.
I don't blame people for just staying in one place because and I think Bora Bora, from what I did research, it is more expensive because it's kind of it's a destination that people sometimes just go there. I mean, they fly in and then go there, but there are always ways to get off, and away from the crowd. You can rent a car there. I think one thing that would have been interesting is that because I think the airport is on one of the Motus, which is the kind of the islands that surround the central island of Bora Bora.
Yeah.
Motu is like there are a lot of these islands that have a chain of islands around them. So those are Motu, and I think the airport is on one of those. And so you have to take a boat across this lagoon to get to the main, probably where the main island. So that would have been neat. And there was I think Mapiti had a similar situation, but also there was a place where you could walk across the lagoon to another island. And that's why I was like, oh, I really want to go there, but just can only do so much. But
next time,
that really sounded it. And the Tuamotus, because they're just, looking at the map, you're like, how does anybody live on these tiny little specks? In Google Earth, and just it's like just a few trees and some houses and that's it. But that would be another type of trip. And then the southern islands they're just even more remote. So I would definitely and there's also a whole bunch of islands that nobody ever talks about, even on kind of the fourth tier of places. Like I don't even know how you would get there, but there's a population. If you zoom in, I got obsessed with all these islands, and I was zooming in on the map, and like there's houses, so somebody lives there, but how do you get there? I want to go there. But yeah, there's quite a few. And the Air Tahiti, it was confusing because the Air Tahiti is one, and then there's Air Tahiti Nui, I think is the local airline.
Okay.
But in any case, they do have a lot of flights to some of these other islands, and then from those islands, I think you would have to take a boat or a ferry or something. That would complicate it even more. But some of the islands, they were just like, everything seems to have something to offer depending on how much you want to disconnect. Like that is not that great there anyway. But if you go to some of these islands, there's just nothing. So if you want that, then pick your remote island and get away. For sure. But yeah, it's far.
Dreamy. Okay. And we're going to finish your travels with one final island, which is going to be the Falkland Islands. An interesting place because as a Brit, what do you think of? Probably the military, the war. That's probably
Yeah.
about it. But someone visiting there as a tourist is quite unique, I think. So what was the thinking there, and why did you want to go to the Falkland Islands, should I say?
Well, so this was actually part of a expedition cruise to Antarctica, and
Okay.
wanted to go to Antarctica as my seventh and final continent for quite some time. It had been kind of a goal. I think it was originally supposed to be 2020, and then didn't happen. And then just started talking to a friend, and he wanted to go, and it just kind of came together. Mid-year last year, and we booked our tickets. But as I was doing the research, my original thought was I was just going to go find a last minute cheap, whatever cheap means, right? It's still expensive to go there. But then there were a lot of options to include South Georgia and the Falkland Islands. And I thought those would be hard to get to, independently. And this is just part of the whole thing. I might as well just go big. And so we got an 18-day excursion that included Falkland Islands, South Georgia, and then the Antarctic Peninsula. And so that was how I was able to get there. Now you can go independently. I actually know somebody that spent a week there. It really would, there's a lot of other things that I would have liked to have seen. Had limited time based on the cruise schedule, but we had 2 full days there, and they were really each stop was like a separate day, really. So the first landing was in Stanley, the capital. So we had to take our Zodiac boats from the ship to the dock, and we had the morning where we saw some wildlife and some penguins not too far from Stanley, but then the rest of the day and afternoon we got to explore Stanley. It was the largest city we had been in our entire trip. Over 2 weeks before, so it was a big metropolis here. It's a very charming, it's right there on the water. It's very there's the British phone booth, and the post office, which of course I go to all the post offices I can when I travel. And a lot of shops and some museums. The local museum, like the main museum of the Falkland Islands, was actually really good, and they had some shops and different things. So it was, and pubs, of course. They had a brewery. I found the one brewery, some good beer. I went to a pub and had some local fish and chips, and talked to the woman that was working there. And it was interesting because I was able to get a little bit more insight into how everything is now, because if Americans even are familiar with the Falkland Islands, it's probably because of the war. And I had started this whole Antarctic trip in Ushuaia, which is the furthest south in Argentina, in Tierra del Fuego. Well, there's signs everywhere that says Islas Malvinas 40 years. So Islas Malvinas is what they refer to as the Falkland Islands in Spanish in Argentina. And Islas Malvinas son Argentinas, and it's quite everywhere still. And I got this insight from this woman at the pub that she said she's on social media, and she gets kind of hate messages from people that don't even know her, like young people that weren't even alive. So it's definitely an interesting, awkward situation, because they're really close. We actually had some Argentinians on our cruise ship, which is probably one of the only ways they can get there, or maybe feel comfortable getting there to see it. But regardless of how anybody feels about that, I forget what year it was, but there was a referendum, and the Falkland Islanders voted like almost
99%, wasn't it? I think something like that.
And what I was surprised about there was the diversity. I just expected to see mostly British like people there.
That's my question. Yeah, what was it like? Yeah.
So I had heard they told us that on the cruise ship that because of the war there were a lot of mines that had been placed, and to demine the island they had hired this group of deminers from Zimbabwe, and then a lot of the cruise ship workers live there. So there's a Filipino, there's other populations from different regions, and I would think also from different, former, like the British Commonwealth. One thing that it was interesting to know is that education is paid for by, so if you become a resident of, a citizen of the Falkland Islands, you can have education. So a lot of some of the kids or whatever they would go on to college in the UK. It would be paid for. So if your family lived there for a while, then they could apply for residency, get residency, and then their children could go off to university or whatever. So it was it's a relatively small population. I don't think there's more than 5,000, 4,000 people in the whole territory. So it was actually interesting to know that, but sad that the sentiments are still there from the Argentinian side, and really looking at the museum and just hearing different things, you get the sense that everybody was a kind of a loser, a victim in that, because these young soldiers from Argentina didn't know what, they were not prepared. This woman was telling me some horror stories about what she had encountered, and but aside from that, I mean, it's a really interesting place. I mean, Stanley as a city, just very tranquil and quaint. But then we went to the West Falklands on our next day and went to 2 islands. So each island, or most of the islands, are owned by some family. And so each island kind of has a settlement, which is like the farm of the family, and maybe another. And we went to Carcass Island, and we did a hike from one beach to the settlement, and then they had baked little cakes and goodies, and we were told there'll be some cakes there, but we didn't expect it to be an operation. There was like whole staff with coffee and tea, and then about 30 different kinds of desserts.
Oh, wow.
It was this cute little place that they rent out. A lot of these islands have like a bed and breakfast type of thing. The only way in, if you're staying there as a guest, you'd have to fly, unless you have your own boat, because there's no other way to get there. But it was very peaceful and interesting to see. And then there's a lot of different kind of wildlife, especially from what we had seen in South Georgia and Africa. And then Saunders Island was the last stop, and that was probably my favorite because it kind of had it all. It had beautiful beaches, even though the weather was chilly. It was beautiful beaches. The sun was out. We went up this really steep hill. We got to see penguins and sheep together, which apparently that's the only place you can do that.
Okay, that's an interesting fact, isn't it?
It's one of those your photo shots, because it's rare that you'll be able to see those 2 species.
No thought of that.
And then we got to walk up to this area of nesting black-browed albatrosses, and their nests are kind of like a bowl shape that they make, and they're all sitting in there, just like all spaced out. And then at the edge of one of them, there were a bunch of rockhopper penguins, which was the 7th species of penguins that we had seen on the trip. Wow. 7th at last. We didn't see the emperor penguins on the trip, but we saw the most of the ones that you can see. And and below in the sea there were some dolphins swimming, and it was just like perfect way to end the trip. But very little population on, in these areas. I think there was a family that lived on the other side of the island, but we didn't go to the settlement there. But it was really all about the penguins and the wildlife. And we walked down on the beach and got to see a bunch of stuff there, like the penguins, and from the other angle. So definitely worth stopping there. If you had more opportunity to go around, I think that you could, on some of the islands, like the mainland of West Falkland and East Falkland, you could probably rent a car and drive around. But the airline called Figus, I don't know what it stands for, Falkland Islands General Aviation Services, that's kind of their charter flights that fly to these different islands, so that their tourist season would probably be in their summer.
Yeah.
In February. And when it was the morning stop that we made, because I had looked at the forecast and they kind of looked like, okay, well, we were just in Antarctica, this is further north, we'll be fine. But it was freezing. The wind just totally went through every single layer. Everybody was freezing. But then by the afternoon, it warmed up to probably in the mid-20s Celsius, and it was just beautiful. The sun was out. We sat outside drinking our beers and just like, oh, this is nice.
I think it's known for its 4 seasons in one day, I think. Yeah.
Definitely experienced that. We didn't have any snow, but that morning was quite brisk. And but yeah, it was, I went to the bank and got some money. They were prepared because I collect currencies as well. So I handed over some cash, and they already had like all the coins in a little bag because I guess there were enough people that asked for that. But then I got some extra money to spend in one of the pubs or something. And
is it pounds? Is it English pounds?
So it's a Falkland Island pound, but it is tied to the British pound. So I think it's the same exchange rate, but it's their own currency.
Got it.
And the coins have like different animals, like different kinds of penguins, and the wara, which is an extinct kind of creature that used to be there. It's like a wolf type of creature. It doesn't, but it was the only. I think it was only found in the Falklands. So,
okay.
And the museum had a stuffed version of one. But yeah, it was pretty neat to see that, to experience that, and just didn't expect to see the diversity. I walked past a playground and it was like you could see the kids playing, and they were quite a more of a diversity than I'd expected. There's a lot of because Falkland Islands is still associated with the whaling industry because of South Georgia, and there were a couple markers of demonstrating that whales were slaughtered by the thousands. There were some things there. There were a couple monuments. Definitely, there was a monument to Margaret Thatcher because it was the prime minister during the war. So I think it's very popular. That was something that I don't think I've seen before, but
I don't think you'll see that very often.
But yeah, it was a neat stop, and I certainly didn't. I was the last one on the boat, riding the boat back with the staff, because I didn't want to leave. I want another pint, but it was a good trip.
My only other question would be, like, individually traveling there, which countries can you fly to in South America or fly from?
Yeah, so I think the main flights are coming from Chile.
Okay.
Actually, they were telling me that they get a weekly shipment of like fruit and stuff that doesn't grow there. It comes from Chile, and so for Chile, I think they're pleased with the arrangement because there's a close relationship there. It either flies from Punta Arenas or maybe other places, but that's kind of the most logical place. And that's also a place where a lot of Antarctic expeditions start. But yeah, there's not really an easy way to get there. The most logical way would be from Argentina, but there's no flights.
Yeah, no flights. Yeah, I don't think they risk that.
And I had to be, I spent some time in Argentina after this cruise, and I made sure to say Islas Malvinas because
Right.
it's like I don't have any, I'm not involved in the history of it, right?
Yeah.
I just don't want to. Some people just are very touchy about it, and so you have to be aware of that. But I didn't feel that anybody. I mean, there were plenty of British tourists on the ship, and then in Argentina, I don't think there's any issues that way. But I think if you start talking about it, there might be some tension. But for the most part, yeah, it's just an arrangement that has worked, has happened, and now they've kind of got it down with Chile. And I think there might be another way to get there, but I'm not familiar.
I guess there's a big military base there as well, I'd imagine, because my couple of friends I know were based there. So I guess there's still a military presence on the island. It's we're not going to go into the history of it, but it's just a bit awkward because if the population say no, 99.5% say no, but Argentina want it back, well, there's no one can win here because the residents don't want it, but Argentina do. So what happens if it's just a bit of a awkward situation.
Yeah, and I think I've been thought about that too. Like regardless of the historical claims or all of that, I mean, the current reality is that the generations have passed, so many generations have passed that it doesn't make sense to have that relationship with Argentina. And you could say the same for other countries in the world that have kind of disputed situation. And it just kind of puts the people that are living there in the middle and kind of but I know that the people that the general demeanor in the very, very short time that I was there seemed that, people seemed to be pleasant enough and nobody looked upset. I've been in places where kind of the general outlook looks bleak, and there maybe because the weather was nice, everybody was in a good mood. So I don't know.
Maybe, yeah. Okay. We're going to delve into your just a slight travel philosophy first, and then we'll go on to websites, blogs, etc. Because we mentioned before we started recording about how you like to travel, like try and introduce slow travel, really immerse yourself in the culture. So just tell us a little bit how you see travel and how you like to travel yourself.
Yeah, I mean, now because I have left my full-time job, I'm trying to be a lot more intentional and slower about travel because it's not a vacation. But really what's always driven me has been curiosity. And that's kind of just not just about travel, but I think having that about life extends into travel because I want to know what's around the corner, what's on that island, what do they eat, why is this here? I mean, it goes on. And so sometimes you can't do everything, but I really try to explore as much as I can, connect with the people to get a sense of what life is like there for them, and just be open more to experience than having to go check off a bunch of places to see. That said, of course, I do enjoy the planning process of what is there to do there, what is there to see. I might make a list, I might make a plan with dates and kind of plan that all out, but then I kind of have a big asterisk, all subject to change based on, I want to be available if I run into somebody that invites me to their brother's wedding, and it's like, I've done that before.
Yeah.
And it's great because you can't plan that into your trip. It's the stuff like that that I want to be open to. And also just because I'm having to balance work. I have clients and trying to put different social media stuff together for my, trying to create this travel brand right now. So I'm just balancing that with just being in a place. So I really let curiosity be my guide for that, for all of it, and try to do some work. But then if I'm just feeling the urge to go out and explore, then I'll do it. Just walk around. Sometimes that's a lot of my agenda, is just, I'm here, I'm going to go walk around. Something might come up. If not, at least I'll see something different that I hadn't seen yesterday. And that's really all I need.
Yeah.
If I keep the expectations to a point of always being open to discovery, then I won't be disappointed. If I'm looking for something specific and searching and not finding it, then I'm going to get disappointed. And I think a lot of people go into their vacations and travel that way. They have to go see this. They have to have that one experience. They have to have that Instagram photo with the flowing dress on Santorini or whatever. But and if it doesn't work out perfectly, they're going to have a bit of a negative experience about it. Not everybody, but I think I just try to abandon that, and as much as I can. So certainly sometimes things happen. I got sick when I was in Armenia, so I just didn't feel like going to these. There's these caves that I really wanted to see. The people used to live in, and it just wasn't going to happen that day. So I still got to experience something else, and that is my philosophy. Just try to experience as much as you can while you're there. You're not going to see everything unless you can find a ticket to more immortality. And even it's subject to the whims of the situation at hand. There's places that don't exist anymore. There's countries that changed governments, and now, when I grew up, Venezuela was not, it was easy to go to Venezuela, but it's really tough now. And there's different places like that, and conversely, there's places that might not be safe or open right now, but give it some time. And so that's kind of where I'm at with my travels. Try to go to the places that are accessible right now, and hope that later I can get to some of the other places. So we'll see.
That's awesome. And you do blog about these on your website. So can you tell people your website and also what blogs you have written, or how often you plan to maybe release some in the future?
Yeah, well, so I'm kind of undergoing this metamorphosis right now of creating a travel brand that's a little bit more consistent. I've had blogs for years off and on, starting just like a journal, and then having a lot of different interruptions. But pretty much now, so my website is John the Traveler. So it's 1L, Traveler. That I just found that URL was open, and I thought that's too good to pass up. So that is my website. I haven't been posting as much there as I have on Instagram and Facebook, just because there's always so much going on. When I'm traveling, I usually try to do end of the day updates. And so my plan right now is to try to have at least once a month or so some sort of blog post. Right now I'm working on the costs of what I spent in Armenia, to break it down into what I did and what my costs were, because there's always some unforeseen things, and then some things that I save money on and that sort of thing. So but yeah, that's the plan. Would try to be once a month, and then daily on my Instagram, which is also in Facebook, and Threads whenever. That's as much as I can handle right now. I have a YouTube channel, but I have a couple things on there, but it's not active yet, really. Maybe.
Okay. So I'll put links for all those in the show notes so people can follow you, or at least have the option to go on your website. And I've read some of your blogs on there, so they are great. And my next question would be, just lastly, before we get to the travel questions at the end, what's next for your travels?
So I am planning a trip to the Horn of Africa in November.
Yeah.
November, early December, kind of trying to figure out options. It's the type of place that I might want to get in on a little group tour just to make it easier to get from point A to point B. But I have looked at doing some of it. I know you can do most things solo. I prefer solo travel, but just the timing, and I do still have to have an occasional internet connection to work with my clients. That's one thing that I didn't used to have. So that is my next trip to so Djibouti, Somaliland,
Yeah.
Ethiopia, and Eritrea. So that's kind of the 4 that I'm looking at right now for about a month to a month and a half.
Nice. That sounds an amazing trip.
Looks like it's the best. I mean, most of the places that I was looking at, and I wanted to go to Africa. I hadn't been there since 2011, and it was just really high on my list to calling me back. And but a lot of places were, it's the rainy season, and I don't really want to spend most of my time wet. So I'd rather be hot and dry than wet.
Yeah.
I wanted to go to places that were a little bit more challenging, so my partner won't have too much FOMO. South Africa would have been a tough one because there's so many nice cool things to see there that I think go there another time. So
okay, that's a great trip. Okay, we're gonna finish my quick fire travel questions at the end here. So these are normally some of your favorite things or spots or foods and stuff around the world. And my first question is,
Hey, yeah, just a quick one. I just want to say there are many ways to support this podcast. You can buy me a coffee and help support the podcast with $5, or you can go to my merch store with the affiliate link with TeePublic, where there's plenty of merch available to buy, such as t-shirts, jumpers, hoodies, and also some children's clothing. Thirdly, which is free, you can also rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, or Good Pods. Also, you can find me on social media on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. Simply just search for Winging It Travel Podcast, and you'll find me displaying all my social media content for traveling, podcast, and other stuff. Thank you.
3 countries that you have traveled to that you would say are some of your favorites.
Yeah, so I mentioned I don't typically do favorites because there's always something to see everywhere I go, but I know this is a popular question, so I have places that I would say probably fit that bill. So one would be Peru. Peru just has a mixture of everything, and I really enjoyed Machu Picchu, but also some of the other lesser known things, stuff that I didn't have high expectations for because I didn't know much about them. The food, the people, the different landscapes. Yeah, it really called to me when I was in Peru. Another one would be Tajikistan. So a little bit different. But I was there for a month in 2008 after I had gone back to Uzbekistan to go to that wedding. I traveled around, and I think that was probably one of the more transformative trips for me because it was mid-October, so it was kind of getting away from the tourist season, which wasn't much back then. So I ended up getting stranded in this little town and thought I was wasting all this time, but it ended up being I ended up just meeting local people, hanging out with them, just walking around. People would invite you to their house, and I feel like every day in Tajikistan was an adventure. There were a few days that I wasn't sure I was going to make it because of the roads, but it was like just the adrenaline factor and the stories and the memories are just so strong and fresh. I really, really enjoyed Tajikistan. And to try to figure out where else, I want to pick a geographically a different place, and I'll just add Uruguay because that was this year. And oftentimes my favorites are where I just had come from, but
Yeah.
Uruguay was really special. I didn't have a lot of expectations because it was right next to Argentina. So I was like, well, I'll just go across the ferry and check it out. But it really impressed me with everything, the beaches and the laid back people. The population was just, it was just so chill. And I really liked the cities that I went to and everything. So yeah, Uruguay for sure.
Okay. And if you could pick one city in the world to drink a coffee and watch the world go by, where are you going to drink your coffee?
Coffee. Well, since you mentioned coffee, I have to pick somewhere in Colombia.
Of
Um,
course.
uh, that was a contender for one of the top favorites because I was only there for a week, but we had a friend in the coffee region, and so we got to go to some plantations and get some of the coffee stuff, and it really is the best coffee. So I would say just sitting in a little cafe, maybe city might be a stretch, but it's called Salento, and just a sit and watch the town square, just
Yeah.
having your delicious coffee that you know was just from down the road. And
Dream.
yeah, definitely.
Okay. And what about a top 3 favorite cuisines that you've experienced on the road?
Hmm. Well, probably Sicily. Uh, I mean, I still remember some of the meals there, and it's Italy, but yet it's really distinct. And 90% of the menus were completely, even translated. Like, I've never seen any of that on any Italian menu in the United States or anywhere I've been in my life. And some of that food was just incredible. And the wine and everything. Yeah, Sicily for sure was memorable. I have a lot, but that we'll stop with that one.
And you get 3 here, so you can name
Oh,
2
three.
more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Okay. Well,
because
have to
if
do
people have been
five.
to loads of countries, you can have a little bit of leeway with three options here. Yeah.
Um, well, then I will probably pick Thailand because I mean I love Thai food anywhere, but Thailand, it was really, yeah, just even just a basic pad Thai, just so satisfying. It's like the comfort food I never knew about.
Yeah.
Growing up in Kansas, we did not have kind of cuisine. First time I tried a lot of ethnic cuisines was either in the country that they're from or another country like Uzbekistan. I tried a bunch of different cuisines there because I just wasn't familiar with them.
Yeah.
And then a third would probably be more well, Turkey because it kind of combines the some of the Mediterranean cuisine, but it's really got its own, and every city kind of has a specialty. So I really liked that I was there for a couple of weeks before I realized I'd only eaten Turkish food. Usually when I'm traveling, you'll find a place that even just for budget reasons, you just eat like pizza or, a burger or something that's or maybe even another cuisine, but not the local. But Turkey was it's always so much that I didn't know anything about Turkish food before that. So um, it was always a discovery point too when you go to the next city, like what's their specialty, and try to find it and find what's different there. So yeah, for sure.
Okay. And out of all the countries you travel to, what's been the best country for budgeting? So where does a dollar go the furthest, in your opinion?
Well, probably still true, but somewhere in central, like Tajikistan or Uzbekistan. I mean, Indonesia. So when I traveled in late 99, early 2000, I traveled around Southeast Asia, and a lot of those countries were very affordable. They're affordable now for most people's standards, but at that time, super cheap. And I think I remember keeping a note of like the most expensive place that we stayed and the cheapest. And I think the cheapest was a room that I split with my travel partner, and it was like 35 cents each in Indonesia. Wasn't the best, but it was okay.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, that definitely, maybe I'll just pick Indonesia because I think it was a little bit cheaper. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it still is the case. Some people have said that answer. Okay. And what about if you could live in one country for 1 year, where are you going to live?
Well, I probably would say Argentina.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I really liked Buenos Aires, and it felt comfortable. It felt like home in a way,
Mm-hmm.
but not. Yeah, I wanted to stay longer. I wanted to live there longer. So I would say that, and it's
Okay.
also affordable right now for Americans at least.
Yeah. It is
If you
indeed.
have a dollar,
Yeah. Yeah.
the right exchange rate.
Yeah. Their inflation's crazy. Okay. What about a favorite beach?
Ooh, that's a tough one because there's kind of different categories of that. But one of the most memorable beaches, well, okay, in general, I would say Thailand,
Mm-hmm.
because there's so many options. There's one though in Myanmar that was really hard to get to, but it was just miles and miles of beaches with nobody on it. And that was pretty cool. And then Anguilla, I want to shout out to Anguilla because that's where we spent our honeymoon. But some of those beaches were definitely like the Caribbean picture postcard. Actually, there was a postcard that I found that was right where we were staying. There was a particular thing I recognized. So yeah, there's three. Sorry.
No, three is absolutely allowed. Okay. What about a favorite walk, hike, or trek?
I'm trying not to repeat places just so I can throw extra ones in, but I keep thinking of Tajikistan and Peru. Yeah, just, I mean, the mountains in Tajikistan, there's just nobody there, and it's wild and unexplored. Peru, some of the vantage points going up, especially where there's some views of ruins. Yeah, and I don't know, Armenia, I didn't get to hike as much as I wanted to, but I think that would be a place to hike across the country if I could, for sure.
Okay. Next question. You already mentioned your trip this year you got coming up, so let's ignore that for a second. 3 countries that you'd love to travel to next. No rules here. Just you haven't been to them. What 3 are you going to choose?
Ireland, Iceland, New Zealand.
All very similar in terms of like geography and vibe and feel.
This is always tough. I constantly make a list and then change it, and those are kind of those are more popular places. But I think because in Scotland should probably be tied up there because embarrassingly enough, I haven't been there. My last name's McKenzie.
Yeah.
I have Irish background too, and so those are just places that I always hear about. But I would, if you will indulge me to leave an alternate list of more off the beaten track kind of place.
Yeah.
I would say Tonga, Malawi, and Bhutan.
Oh yeah, Bhutan. It's always on my list. It's just quite expensive.
Yeah, and maybe I should replace Malawi with Mauritius because that has kind of been on the top of my list for longer. Yeah, and it's kind of it really is kind of my next bucket list, but I tend to travel based on a lot of factors, flight deals, weather, timing, whims. Just somebody mentions a place and I'll get in a rabbit hole of wanting to go there. Or there's an event somewhere that's actually been, this trip to Africa is probably one of the few ones that I've actually just planned without having some event there. So, but yeah.
Okay. 2 more questions. The last or penultimate question is going to be 3 favorite states in the US.
Oh, well, I will say North Carolina is one because it has a lot of everything. It's got mountains on the west coast, but western part of the country. East coast has the beaches, and then you've got cities and other parts of North Carolina. So it's kind of got a lot of thing. It could be some place that we look at for retirement even. So I've always liked North Carolina. And my others are going to be a little weird probably, but North Dakota, because it has a lot of ghost towns, and I'm kind of obsessed with ghost towns. Kansas has a lot of ghost towns too, but North Dakota really has some places that are picture perfect. And I'm intrigued by it. So, and Missouri is another place. So, Missouri has a lot of natural, like outdoor rivers and hills and mountains and like small mountains, the Ozarks, and small towns and just little quaint, kitschy Americana stuff and cities. And so it has a mix of different cultures too. There's different communities here and there. I've enjoyed my time in Missouri. My dad's originally from Missouri, so there's a little bit of history there too. So.
Okay. And the last question is going to be, if you were to say a few sentences as to why someone should travel, what would you say to those people?
Traveling is something that constantly challenges you to learn something more about the world and about yourself, and keeps you wanting to know more. And so it just kind of repeats. It is something that I have, as I travel more, I feel like each experience is deeper because I'm always learning something different that I thought I've surely learned it all by now, and then get challenged again. And it also is a great way for me to get out of my routine of the kind of the same old. And we all have to do certain routines, but for me, I think this would be true for anybody. Just doing something different will change your perspective, and that could help change your mood and change your direction in life. And that's exactly what travel's done for me. So I think everybody should at least try to do something besides an all-inclusive resort type of travel. Just get out there, experience, explore, get curious. That's my tagline. Get curious.
Awesome. Thanks, John, for coming onto the podcast. That's a great way to finish that. I know this podcast, we've been trying to get this done for a few weeks. Just glad to finally be in a stable place where we both can get onto the call. And yeah, it's been a great chat. I've learned a lot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to my Winging It Travel podcast episode today. You can find me on Instagram at James Hammond Travel or Winging It Travel Podcast. You can search for both. I release weekly clips of this podcast episode, as well as photos from the last 8 to 10 years of my travels. You can also follow me on TikTok, Facebook and Pinterest by searching Winging It Travel Podcast. I do release daily content to do with travel and the podcast throughout the week. Also check out my website, jameshammond.org. There's content about myself, my travels, and there's also a newsletter sign up as well as a contact form. Finally, please rate and review the podcast on Podchaser. This is my platform of choice. Alternatively, you can rate this on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts from. This really helps the podcast gain a bit of traction for the future in terms of guests and content. And I'm glad to see that you guys are listening out there, reviewing it and enjoying the content so far. Stay safe, stay humble, keep listening, keep traveling, and I'll catch you soon. Cheers, James.